Hello, and thank you for launching this presentation entitled Addison and Steele New in Memory of Alexander Waugh, Episode 3. My name is Eric Luskow, and today is March 7th, 2025. I'll be approaching this topic from an Oxfordian perspective, i.e., that Edward de Vere, the 17th Earl of Oxford, was the author of the works of William Shakespeare, historically attributed to William Shakespeare, the man from Stratford. If you're not familiar with the Shakespeare Authorship Question and the Oxfordian theory, I'd highly recommend you visit the Shakespeare Oxford Fellowship website, shakespeareoxfordfellowship.org, for an overview. I would also highly recommend you watch my videos, Addison and Steele New, episodes 1 and 2, before watching this one. The episodes build upon each other, and I make reference to the information in the prior installments, which allows me to not repeat myself too often. So in this episode, we'll look at the Spectator edition dated Monday, April 23rd, Essay 46, or the Spectator's Paper of Notes, signed with the letter I and generally agreed to have been written by Joseph Addison. All essay dates referenced in this presentation are from 1711. So Essay 46's date has geometric significance. The 4 for April plus 2 plus 3 plus 1 plus 7 plus 1 plus 1 equals 19, which is the geometric value of the letter T. If you've watched episodes 1 and 2 and Alexander Waugh's videos, you will know why T is important. 19 is also the number of the essay we reviewed in episode 1. It's important to note that The Spectator was published every day but Sunday, so there was plenty of latitude to choose publication dates for additional significance, geometric or otherwise. For example, Oxford's birth date, as noted in episode 2. The quote is from Ovid's Metamorphoses, undoubtedly a major Shakespeare influence, translated by Oxford's uncle, Arthur Golding. Many Oxfordians have argued that Oxford himself either wholly or partly produced the Golding translation. There's quite a bit of Oxfordian literature on this theory, well worth your perusal. The verse number is 9, which has Christian significance, and to push it a bit further, the geometric value of the letter I is 9. So turn the Roman book number 1 and the section number 1 into the letter I, then into the geometric 9, and you now have 3 nines in total. You also have a quote entirely appropriate for this essay, the jarring seeds of ill-consorted things. But these things, the essay topics, are not quite as ill-consorted as Addison might want you to believe, as we'll see. So the conceit of this essay is that the spectator, the persona all the essayists share, accidentally drops a paper in a coffee house, with said paper containing notes for essays already written or yet to be written. The paper is found and reviewed by a small group who find it of interest, and they then enlist the boy to find the proper owner. After failing to find the owner because the author, Addison in this case, is too embarrassed to admit it's his, the boy is requested to read the note aloud to those gathered in the coffee house. After the boy reads it, our author importunes him for the note, pretends to review it with a cursory glance, then sets it afire to light his pipe. So let's take a step back and recontextualize this series of events in a different way. An author releases an anonymous work, inadvertently in this case. It's read aloud, generates much laughter and debate. The author declines to acknowledge his authorship and then burns the work. This, I would argue, is Addison at his best. He has extracted a series of events, in this case, the secret of the Shakespeare authorship, and created a mini farce of it. So on this slide, we can see the contents of his lost paper. As just stated, it is a list of topics that have been or may yet be used for an essay. And I've underlined the ones I'll be reviewing. The slide following shows the remainder of the list. There are a total of 49 topics separated by long dashes. The hyphens and the hyphenated words are not considered topic separators. Now here's the entire number list on one spreadsheet, and it is quite revealing. And warning, there'll be more gematria coming up in this section. Hold your nose if you dislike gematria. So here's a slide with the topics I consider of interest enlarged, make it a little more obvious the connections to Oxford. So topic 8, ghosts, is essay 44, dated April 20th. I include it to demonstrate how prevalent Shakespeare is in The Spectator, and as we saw in episode 2, that Hamlet is often the specific focus. There are numerous other references to Shakespeare in The Spectator that I have not included in these presentations because they are not germane to the authorship question. And as a reminder, Addison failed to include Shakespeare in his 1694 poem, An Account of the Greatest English Poets. Yet he repeatedly refers to him in The Spectator when providing examples of excellence in writing or stagecraft. My best guess, and I stress the word guess as to why, is that by leaving Shakespeare out, he was in effect sending a message that someone was missing and the received history was incomplete. Another option is that it was impossible to get himself into any sort of trouble if he avoided the subject entirely. In any event, it is highly peculiar that he left Shakespeare out. The topic 14 is Richard Steele's essay on the envious man that we covered in episode 1. The bit about a short face is a self-deprecating joke by Steele about his own physiognomy. The letter O for Oxford is the 14th letter in gematria, and there are numerous contrivances with the letter O in Shakespeare, with perhaps the most audacious being the line from Hamlet, "O, O, 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 I die." So topic 17, that magic number again, is entitled Jew Devouring and Ham of Bacon. And though the edition I took the first slide from silently changed "an" to "a," it is "an" in the original. There is no essay on a Jew devouring a ham of bacon that I've found to date, but surely the allusion to Shylock and his demand for a pound of Antonio's flesh is obvious. The use of the word devouring, with devour being an extremely close homonym to dever, makes this, to my mind, a convincing and quite clever, though slightly gruesome and now offensive, authorship allusion. Topic 18 is the essay on Westminster Abbey, the subject of episode 2 in this series, and which, as you would recall, contains 2 successive references to Hamlet. Topic 19 is a veiled reference to Freemasonry and its claim of origins in Egypt. The phrase Grand Cairo appears in the very first Spectator essay, written by Addison, in which our fictive author, the Spectator, tells us about his trip to Cairo to measure a pyramid for himself. It also appears in Essay 8 and continues as a running joke throughout the life of the Spectator's publication. As was related in the 2 prior episodes of this series and many of Alexander Waugh's videos, the gematria value for the letter T is 19, and 3 T's form the Masonic triple tau, with the hidden 4th T forming the quaternary within the ternary. And my sincere apologies for the repetition here. Topic 20, procrastination, appears to be a reference to Essay 27, dated March 31st, which mentions a conversation the Spectator, in this case Steele, had with his friend a clergyman about the dangers of procrastination. Much later essay, number 123, dated July 21st, written by Addison, also mentions procrastination and connects it via a quote from Abraham Cowley, as seen here, to the age of 40, one of Oxford's 2 gematric numbers. An obvious Shakespeare connection to procrastination is, of course, Hamlet, who repeatedly berates himself for his delay in exacting revenge on Claudius. Topic 21 is April Fools, Essay 47, dated April 24th. Written by Addison, it is a lengthy reflection on foolery in the theater and different types of fools. And despite telling the reader he shall pass by the consideration of those stage coxcombs that are able to shake a whole audience, He ends the essay by citing Sir John Falstaff and his famous line, "I am not only witty in myself, but the cause that wit is in other men." And Charles Windsor Barrell in 1940, citing William Cowthorpe in his 1897 History of English Poetry as describing Oxford, and here this is the quote from Barrell, in exactly the same words that Shakespeare used to characterize Falstaff. And now here's Barrell quoting Cowthorpe. He was not only witty in himself, but the cause of wit in others. Double end quote. Well, not quite exact, but no cause here to quibble. Interestingly, Cowthorpe doesn't cite Shakespeare or reference Falstaff. His example of Oxford causing wit in others is the "Were I a King" poem and Philip Sidney's response poem, "Wert Thou a King?" But obviously, Cowthorpe knew where it was from and assumed that his readers did. So he's making a connection between Oxford and Shakespeare, which is, I think, quite interesting. So there's so much more in this essay on fools. Addison weaves in what are now possible references to the man from Stratford by mentioning a haberdasher and a shoemaker. Shakespeare's brother was a haberdasher, and there is confusion around two John Shakespeares in Stratford, with one described as a shoemaker. Additionally, Addison slips in a reference to, quote, a natural or an artificial fool, which I believe glances at Rowe's over-insistence discussed in episode 2 on Shakespeare's, quote-unquote, natural genius. The idea of the natural genius must have seemed even more preposterous in Addison's day, when the Latin and Greek languages were more closely studied by the educated than it even does today. Addison also addresses the natural genius in other essays, which I will review in a future episode. But we must move on. Topic 22 is a real howler. Blue boars, red lions, hogs in armor. This is essay 28 dated April 2nd. Ostensibly an essay on signposts hung outside homes and businesses and a projector's pitch to improve their usage, it begins with a quote from Horace about Apollo, translated, presumably by Morrison, as, "Nor does Apollo always bend his bow." We know that Oxford was referred to as Apollo, so we have here what I believe is yet another Oxfordian reference. Blue boar is clearly an Oxford reference. I don't believe I need to provide any more evidence than a picture of his coat of arms. And as an aside, projector did not mean then what it means today. In Addison's time, it was a person or group who proposed a project, in this case, the standardization of signposts. So continuing with topic 22, though not a red lion, here is an Oxford crest showing a lion with a broken spear, with one end of the spear appearing to be a quill tip. And I do detect a possible pun on the word red. Think R-E-A-D rather than R-E-D, and we get a red lion. Continuing with topic 22. Here is a Vere coat of arms with a blue boar standing atop an armored helmet, giving us a hog on armor, if not a hog in armor. Close enough. Additionally, Oxford was made a Knight of the Realm posthumously in 1607 by James I. The topic 23, Enter King with Two Fiddlers Solus, is essay 29, dated April 3rd, which directly references Shakespeare and includes a line from Twelfth Night, quote unquote, "It had a dying fall." The line, "Enter a king and two fiddlers solus," appears to be a gaffe from Dryden and is used by Addison to comment on the differences between English, Italian, and French opera. Beyond the direct mention of Shakespeare, he also refers to Henry Purcell, who had adapted A Midsummer Night's Dream, The Tempest, and Timon of Athens into semi-operas in Addison's time. A stage direction is, of course, suggestive of a playwright. In this case, a stage direction even more suggestive of Shakespeare's penchant for combining serious tales, frequently featuring royalty, with comic relief, a la the Henriade. And don't forget Shakespeare's frequent and learned music references. Topic 40, bamboos, cudgels, drumsticks, references Essay 42, which appeared on April 18th. At this point, I hope the number 40 needs no elaboration. Please do note topics 22, 23, and 40 all have 3 subjects. 3 topics with 3 subjects each is not, I suggest, coincidental. Christian numerology overflows in the works of Shakespeare. But back to bamboos, cudgels, and drumsticks. The essay concerns itself with the dramatic arts, specifically cheap theatrics, superfluous ornaments, as Addison calls them. Nice phrase. The essay concludes with a positive reference to Shakespeare and how just a few lines spoken by Brutus, for example, surpasses the most gaudy of effects from other dramatists. The name Shakespeare is the final word in Essay 42 and also our final word on the topics in the Spectator's lost paper of notes. So now we'll circle back to the premise of this essay, Essay 46, the paper of notes, and how it served as a smokescreen for an Addisonian farce on the authorship question. We have a lost paper with no author identified. The club members who discover it and read it are entertained. An unsuccessful search for the owner ensues. The real owner is present but is too embarrassed to acknowledge his authorship. A boy, think Oxford's boys, is instructed to climb up into the auction pulpit, think stage, and read it aloud. The content of the paper contains multiple Shakespeare and Oxford references. More laughter and merriment from the audience. A very substantial citizen suggests there be more to the paper than what is thought. An Oxford scholar explicates one allusion from the paper to the detriment of the very substantial citizen. More laughter. The anonymous author gently confiscates the paper, sets it on fire, and lights his pipe with it. Yet more laughter from the audience, which concludes Addison's farcical take on the authorship question. And this also concludes episode 3. I leave you only with the conviction that Joseph Addison was an extraordinary wit and brilliant writer who knew Oxford was the author of the works of Shakespeare. He clearly delights in teasing his readers, whoever they might be, or whatever they might or might not know. We should be thankful these essays were so popular and have survived intact into our own time. Please join me for episode 4, where we will review another Addison essay in which he comes within a whisker of revealing all. Thank you for watching.